So in example 3, we're looking at estimating a square root, but we're also given that the fence is only sold to the nearest half foot. And that complicates things a little bit, and so I went ahead and drew out a little bit of the problem, though I'll explain it. Right, here's the coop, and over here we have a fenced-in area. We're looking for the area of 42 square feet, or we're given that we have an area of 42 square feet. So this little area I'm drawing in right now, that's 42 square feet. We also know that that area is the length of each side of the fence squared. We're only looking at 3 sides because the chicken coop is one side is given in the problem. So we set up the equation. Area equals 42 feet squared, which equals s squared, s being the length of each side of the fence. So s squared equals 42, and we take the square root of both sides, and s equals the square root of 42. And here's where things get a little bit more complicated, because we're only looking at the fence being sold in half feet increments. So it has to be the nearest half foot, not to the nearest foot, which is what the perfect square would do. So what we want to do is look at what half foot length is closest to the square root of 42. So let's look at perfect squares that involve tenths. So we're looking at, well, with 42, we know 6 is going to be the closest perfect square. So we'll call this 6 squared is 36. 7 squared is 49, which we know is way too big. So we know it's going to be closer to the 36 end, but what's closest as far as half units are concerned instead of full units? So what about, well, 6.1, or what about 6.2? What about 6.3? We know that 6.4, so I'll go ahead and draw another number line. So let's call this 6, because we already know it's going to be closer to 6 than it is to 7, because 42, the difference between 42 and 36 is 6. The difference between 42 and 49 is 7. So it's going to be slightly closer to 6 than it is to 7. So let's go ahead and look at 6.1. 6.2, 6.3, 6.4, and 6.5. Let's start out on the high end. What's 6.5 squared? Well, that's 42.25. So that's pretty close. So if we look at this squared, now let's try 6.4. 6.4 squared so that's 40.96. So thankfully I chose the right ones, because 6.5 squared is greater than 42, and 6.4 squared is less than 42. So essentially what I'm saying with this, what we're finding right here, is that 6.4 is less than the square root of 42, which is less than 6.5. And we can see that, again, square root of 42 is closer to 6.5. So if we're looking at it being closer to 6.5, we have 6.5. There's 3 sides of the fence. So to the nearest half foot, estimating, we're looking at 19.5 feet of fence. So again, we start off by finding what our exact length of each side is going to be. We see which perfect squares are closest, and then we just zoom in until we find to the nearest half foot which is closest to the square root in question. If you're curious, we know that the square root of 42 is approximately 6.48074069, and it just goes on. And you can see with that, if we multiply this out to the nearest half foot, we would still get 19.5 feet of fence for the 3 sides of the area that's fenced in for the chickens.